Hey everybody, Chad Madden here with the Grow Your Practice podcast. And today in this episode, we're here with Michael Dwyer and also Adam Baliatico. I had to practice that a few times before we started here, but Mike and Adam are with Prompt EMR. You've likely have heard of them. They've been at all the association events. There's a lot of talk about Prompt EMR within many customers within the breakthrough community as well. So really excited to dive in with them, what they're doing in terms of their partnerships with private practices right now, and helping them. They're helping them grow and expand. So welcome to the podcast here, Mike and Adam.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Great. So I did not ask you your official titles. If you could share that and fill in any gaps in the intro, that would be great. So Adam, we'll start with you.
Yep, I am one of the co-founders with Mike, and I'm also the director of operations and oversee the product development here.
Great, thank you.
And I run the sales team, director of sales.
Thanks, Mike. So can you give seems like you've had quite a rocket ride here within your first few years in business, and you have a lot of traction in the marketplace already, which is very tough to do. So can you talk about how you got started, how Prompt EMR came to be?
Yeah, we're at Prompt, we're all world-class at getting hurt. Similar to many PTs that get into the space, I find there's a common denominator. Someone's been hurt, they go to PT and they love PT. We had a similar start. The first product that we created actually wasn't EMR practice management. It was a way to track patient progress through care. One of the things I found frustrating as a patient, especially my slap tear, was I felt like I was in PT limbo. I didn't know when I was going to essentially leave and be better. So the first product that Adam and I created was a way to track patient progress from visit 1 post-discharge. And we took that product to market and essentially couldn't get anyone to buy. We found that clinics were already using too much technology, and getting someone to a therapist to document twice, just never going to happen, which we found. That led us then to the EMR market because we just couldn't integrate with any EMR. So Adam and I spent 2 years with every user type in a clinic, essentially trying to figure out their problems. How can we take something that, is 50 steps and bring it down to 0 or 1? So I think our perspective is somewhat unique because we're not from the PT industry. So we looked at problems as how do we make this as efficient as possible for every single user in the practice? And what we're doing with our system is automating as much of it as we can, updating consistently. So every 8 weeks, we push a product improvement. And then I think support is actually the most critical piece of a relationship with any technology vendor, not just EMR practice management, not only for answering questions, but we make sure that each user is getting the most out of our solution.
Hey, podcast listeners, when we make assumptions about others, it's just not fair. In spite of that, I'm going to make an assumption about you. You have a growth mindset. You want to help more people, leave a bigger impact, build a better practice. Am I close? If I'm right, then I have a unique offer that I think you'll be interested in. But first, if you're a regular listener, you probably know that this is brought to you by Breakthrough, the leading platform for private practice growth. Breakthrough's mission is to help people in pain get back to normal, live healthier, and do it naturally. The best way to do this is by empowering private practice owners like you to grow your business through direct-to-consumer marketing. If you're a practice owner with a growth mindset, you'd benefit from a risk-free consultation with a Breakthrough growth expert. Go to getbreakthrough.com/podcast offer to take advantage of this unique opportunity. On that call, you'll learn the key principles of how practice owners are helping more people, creating a bigger impact, and building better businesses with Breakthrough systems. As an added bonus, the team at Breakthrough is giving a $50 Amazon gift card to any of the podcast listeners who attend this growth consultation. Sign up for your growth consultation and $50 gift card at getbreakthrough.com/podcast offer. Again, that's getbreakthrough.com/podcast offer.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Anything to add there, Adam?
Yeah, I think just kind of emphasizing on that last point about support. It's one thing to like build good and useful software, but if people don't know how to use it, it's not very valuable. So we really invest a lot of resources into the success and making sure every user knows how to use it right. And that's like how Mike said, we view each clinic we bring on board as a true partnership. It's not just like a client and company relationship.
Great. So it sounds like was there a name of the first, the basically plan of care progress software, for lack of a better term?
It was called Personal Range of Motion PT, so prompt. Because the way I tracked my progress was my range of motion on my shoulder.
Nice. So it sounds like within the, in terms of product market fit, it might have been sounds like a vitamin, right? Where versus the pain pill. As owners, we typically buy the pain pill. We'll be talking about some of that pain here in a second. So probably amazing software, right? And that is part of your EMR and software today.
It's not, but we had to be the source of the data in order to get back to that original product. So that's something we're working on, and most likely Q1, Q2 of 22.
Okay, cool. So, and what are your backgrounds in? You said it wasn't in PT, but
finance
as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the same thing here. I have the PT background, but at Breakthrough, Carl, the co-founder, also a shoulder injury. Mike, college football, playing at LaSalle, was basically lost for the season, was to have surgery, and then physical therapy was his was the savior there. So that created the compassion for, or the passion for physical therapy. Appreciate that. So as you're going through and you're creating a software solution here, who's your ideal customer? What's the ideal customer for Prompt EMR look like?
Yep, any outpatient practice, in particular PTOT speech. We find that the mom and pop clinics actually have very similar problems to enterprise clients. It's just for the enterprise client, it's amplified their problems by 10 million. But we designed it, traditionally our ideal client has been somewhere in the 1 to 10 clinic range. The reason being is just they have the most problems with technology in particular and process. And we love coming in and essentially sorting that out.
And I think that's, basically anything, like Mike said, outpatient, PT, OT speech, and then primarily, they don't have to be purely insurance-based, but like a purely cash-based practice, we probably have too much functionality for them. And then, we got started in the 1 to 10 clinic space, but we have started, obviously with the team rehab announcement, like started to expand into the enterprise. And, from day one, we built the product to scale so that it can easily scale from like a 1 clinic, 1 provider location to a 150 clinic, 1,000 provider across 5 state company. So it's all structured on like very flexible architecture on the back end so that it can scale.
Awesome. Like you mentioned, same problems for the mom and pop and the enterprise. Just out of curiosity, what are the biggest problems that you see facing outpatient PT right now?
It depends, I think, on the user type. For a clinician, no one likes documenting. They want to document the least amounts possible. For front office, it's keeping the schedule full, making sure people are attending their plan of care. For the billing teams, it's getting AR down, getting claims out in an efficient manner. And then for the owner, it's managing the business effectively, essentially through data. Yeah, it's very similar across the board. We see when doing demos with a startup versus 100+ clinic group.
So you mentioned the team rehabilitation. I think they're over 100 clinic locations, right?
Correct.
125, 150, something like that. 5 states. Oh, that's exactly what you were talking about, Adam. Got it. There's from the article on the partnership that Prompt has with team rehabilitation, I found a paragraph, and I would just like to read it for everybody because I think it does a nice job of summarizing exactly what you do. So We entered the market less than 2 years ago. Prompt's modern cloud-based all-in-one solution handles all aspects of an outpatient rehabilitation practice, including inbound patient management. I'll ask you about that in a second. Documentation, billing, home exercise programs, practice management. The system creates operational efficiencies for outpatient rehab practices in all areas of their business through a focus on automation and repeatable processes. So one of the terms that I've heard the most over the last 3 years that has really come to rise, and it's probably from blitz scaling and Vern Harnish's work with scaling up, et cetera, is those scalable and repeatable processes. For most practice owners that are 10 clinic locations or less, and I'll throw myself into that because we're there, it's aspirational, but if you talked with 100 owners that were there, they would have 100 different definitions around what repeatable and scalable is. So you've done it, you've seen it. Can you define for everybody how an owner, if this is the first time they're thinking about repeatable and scalable, what does that mean to you, and what should it mean to the best owners?
Yeah, I can start there, and then maybe Mike can fill in. So one, it can't be scalable and repeatable if it's not written down. It needs to be written down. Here's what we do to accomplish this task, and it's generally has to be focused on, we're trying to accomplish this business goal. Here are the steps to make that happen, and it should be documented in a way that anyone could pick it up and accomplish it. So like in the Prompt software, we have a process we've created to fill your schedule next week with patients who are under scheduled according to their plan of care. And we have a knowledge-based article and a video that writes down, here's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Here's how you do it. And we could hand that article to any Prompt user, or really any non-Prompt user. It's so descriptive and explanatory that anyone could pick it up and execute the process and start filling your schedule for next week. So that to me is scalable and it's repeatable. I don't know if Mike, you have anything else to add on that.
So if it's in my head, it doesn't count, Adam. That's what you're
Correct.
saying.
That's my biggest problem, is I've had to start writing down, like at Prompt, we've really emphasized over the last like 6 or 9 months as we've grown, we need to have scalable and repeatable processes internally. So we've actually spent a ton of resources making our processes that were in my head and Mike's head and our other founding team members' heads. Now they're on paper so that anyone can pick them up and do them. So yeah, it can't be in your head.
Yeah.
I think accountability too, to just making it repeatable. So one of the cool softwares that we have is a system called Pendo, which essentially shows us per user, what are they not using that they should be using, and what's the frequency they're using it at. So like when something new is implemented, you see adherence maybe for a week, but then people will drop off to old ways. The key is to maintain that process, because you can't scale unless you have the most efficient process possible. So I think that's a piece of it too, is just accountability for the user that, they're doing what they should be doing in an efficient way.
And I think if giving a recommendation of a good piece of software to document your processes, we use Notion. It's free, or like something like $6 a month, depending on which tier you get. But it's really the way it's organized, and you can kind of break it out like a page for clinicians, a page for admin workflows, a page for billing workflows. And you can just kind of document processes very nicely there with like great formatting and make them easy and nice to read and things like that. So we use Notion internally at Prompt, and it's been super helpful.
Great. So being the lay physical therapist, PT owner here, I'll share with you how I think about it. And I know Carl is going to roll laughing at this if he hears it. But what was it? Sam Carpenter wrote a book called.
This podcast is brought to you by Breakthrough, the leading platform for practice growth. Breakthrough has helped over 1,500 healthcare practice owners leave a bigger impact in their communities and grow a larger business. As the founder of Breakthrough, I've developed a library of educational resources on practice growth. These are based on my learnings from my own experience as a private practice owner, plus the experience working with thousands of other owners in the Breakthrough community. If you have a growth mindset and you're hungry for free resources to help you grow, check out Breakthrough's Resource Hub. Go to getbreakthrough.com/resources, where you'll find on-demand trainings, tools, templates, planning guides, and a host of other free resources. Again, you can find these at getbreakthrough.com/resources. If you're interested in getting direct support with your practice growth, you can request a free growth consultation at getbreakthrough.com/podcast offer.
Work the system.
Thank you. Work the system. That's right, Mike. So, and in that, he essentially goes through and says, Michael Gerber E-Myth is, I want to work on my business, not in it. But when we start creating time to work on the business, most clinicians have no idea where to go. The key from the book is you start with writing processes. What is in your head? What is something that you do efficiently without even thinking about that you can write down and start training other people, delegating the rest of your team, building up over time. And then he goes through and he says, essentially, effective processes build a system or systems. So in one system, you might have 7 or 20 different processes. The number's arbitrary, but that's key in terms of growing your practice. And the other one is, once you write down the process, it's not over. The key is to look at data, which I know we alluded to already, but the key is, as an executive, as an owner, as a clinical director, as a manager, to go back and look at the data to ensure that the processes are being followed and that you're driving productivity and success on the back end of that process. So wondering if you can talk about that. Also, how your best owners are using data to make more effective business decisions to help them grow.
Yeah, so to the first point, I think what's also really helpful on top of what you just stated is for the owner to live the role they're creating processes for. So what I see in like really successful owners is they'll spend a day out of every month just being at the front desk or just being with the biller and seeing their workflows. That adds to the data point of just where's our process at now and where are we trying to take it. Adam, any light on that? I think I lost.
Yeah, I think that's understanding your actual employees and how they're using the software day to day can give you a lot of ability to create process, or you need to rely on the people you've put in charge of understanding how your team uses the software day to day. So if you're 10 clinics and 75 therapists and you're not in the practice day to day, then you should be relying on your clinic managers to help create your scalable and repeatable processes. Or if you really trust your office manager to handle everything front desk, then you also need to trust your office manager to kind of create those processes. And then on the data side, like using data to run your business is pivotal, and using the right data, right? If you focus on metric A, but really metric A is a function of metrics B, C, and D, and you're not focusing on those and you're just focusing on the end result. I think that's the kind of the biggest, maybe mistake might not be the right word, but thing we see in the industry, that you need to focus on the things that drive business and that drive patient satisfaction, not the end number of maybe total patient visits, right? Total patient visits is the result of you creating process around things 1 through 5 that drive total patient visits.
Yeah, Adam, along those lines, the thing that I've heard owners say when I'm sitting and watching them go through and I'll just say, please share your screen, show me how you look at your business. They may be looking at 40 different metrics and they're all the same. They're all equal, where they're trying to get to basically a margin where they can keep their doors open. Right. So then we talk about leading and lagging. So in your example, you said metric A is what they're looking at. Usually that's a lagging metric like visits. So what are the drivers to that? Well, it's patient reactivation and number of referrals from physicians and calls to the clinic and, clicks on a Google ad or Facebook ad or whatever it is that ultimately result in that initial visit and plan of care. Am I on the right track there?
Yep. And then the one a lot of people don't look at that they should is improper discharges, or basically patient drop off after, say, 3 visits, right? Because you got to plan, you work so hard to get that new patient, you actually schedule their eval, you get their intake paperwork done, you actually do the eval, which is the least profitable visit. and then you lose them after 3 visits on a 3 time a week for 8-week plan of care. So that's a $2,400 plan of care, and you made $300, and you put all the upfront costs in. So like that improper discharge and figuring out why your patients are dropping off, I think is really critical to actually driving visits and profitability and things like that. And also patient satisfaction. If your patient drops off after 3 visits, they didn't meet their goals. They're not going to become a referral source for you.
Yeah, how we've talked about that, and how we look at it personally is we call it graduation rate. So if a therapist in a single month has 20 plans of care start, basically 20 initial evals, how many of those 20 are making it to, their graduation visit or their discharge visit, whatever we're talking about, and how many of those are regrettable ghosting, ghosting plans of care. So yeah, completely in alignment there, and see that as a problem. Another big problem that we're hearing about that's timely in the marketplace is Medicare cuts. I know a lot of practices scrambling right now. So can you talk through, what you're hearing from your users and how you're helping them problem solve through Medicare cuts here coming up in 2022?
Yeah, there's a few things. A big thing is, I think hiring has been a huge issue for people recently. Just keeping their team, hiring new members. So a big focus is just how do we get our system to work for us, not against us, and be as efficient as possible on that system. That's been a big focus and a driver of business for us. Also just adding new service lines and becoming less, I guess, reliant on insurance in a way. A lot of clinics, I think, are, at least ones I've been to recently, have been adopting telehealth for reactivations, for adding different services. One clinic I was just in, they add nutrition, fitness, and behavioral health all under one suite. And it ties, I think, really well just to the patient journey. At least in my case, when I was hurt, my nutrition, I maintained the same calorie intake. I was bummed out that I was hurt because I went from being an athlete to zero. So I think about, how do we elongate a plan of care as well and not just have the patient leave after 12, 20 visits? How do we keep them in our ecosystem for longer? And then also a big thing is just, how do we convert, how do we maintain our POC compliance, make sure people stay throughout care? So I just did a talk for a group on sales and how do we convey the importance to the patient that, they really have to be here 3 times a week for the next 6 weeks. So I think a big piece of that is just getting your team used to building that sales muscle, not just the therapist, but every single person in the clinic.
Yeah, I think the best practices we see with like the POC compliance, they train their staff to teach the patient why you have to come in 3 times a week for 6 weeks, right? Like a lot of times when I was a patient, I didn't want to go to PT 3 times a week. It was 20 minutes there, an hour in the PT clinic, 20 minutes home. It was painful. So knowing that, like, and getting emphasized that just come to PT 3 times a week for 6 weeks or 2 times a week for 8 weeks, do your home exercise programs. And the reason why you're doing it is because you'll actually get better. You'll create a sustained recovery. So like being able to sell that, and I mean, kind of Mike always says, like, everyone really works in sales, no matter what your job is. Being able to sell that to the patient is a super valuable skill for clinics to teach their staff.
Excellent. So I know you're given like the umbrella of the reason why. Is there anything else that is key in that, in terms of the clinicians, front desk, et cetera, communicating with the patient about why sticking to the plan of care is important? Is there anything else there?
So I think one of the things is people attach to the outcome way too much. I think the key to the consumer is give them the data on why it's important, but let them come to the conclusion themselves and kind of guide them there. But also if the person's, not a fit for whatever service you're selling, be okay with that, but at least be an educator. I kind of view sales as we're problem solving. Is the problem you have a good fit for our service, and then going from there. And I think that's important for the front desk as therapist, as the biller, because if a patient comes to you, they want to trust you, and trust leads to, at the end, a buy.
Yeah. Cool. The one thing that I'll share with you, Mike, that we've been using with great success for a while, and I kind of dumb lucked into it because we had my first partner, Mike Gilbert, was at the University of Pittsburgh, and UPMC released this 3 phases of healing. And we have used that time and time again with every patient that comes through, now 3,000, 3,600 patients a year, where we'll go through on the second visit. This is what's going to happen. We walk them through the journey. This is what healing looks like. And here's what you're going to experience as you go through. And just like you said, Adam, it allows the patient to have their own cognition about this is what's going on in my body, and this is how I'm ultimately going to graduate the plan of care. So that's key. The other one that we picked up from one of our clinicians, and I've shared in Breakthrough a lot along those lines, is everybody's just trained to ask the patient as they're leaving, when do we see it again? Because it creates a connection, almost like the old soap opera, okay, you're done with the treatment today. When do we see you next? So you're constantly connecting the dots. And then every once in a while, if somebody fell off because they're on vacation next week or something like that, we can help bridge the gap there and get them scheduled for when they come back from vacation.
Are you consistently training your team on that, Chad, on a regular basis? Because that's one of the things I see as a problem, is it's maybe visited once in a quarterly meeting, but it's not consistently addressed.
Yeah. So it's always painful. The heaviest lifting is always in the beginning, right? So you talked about the highest cost is in the initial eval, right? Because you have your patient acquisition cost, your marketing cost, whatever, driving to that first visit. And that may be, depending on the pathway, $30 to $400 to get that first visit in, right? So when we first rolled that out, and it was just, I did exactly what you're talking about, where I watched what our best clinicians were doing. And I noticed this one team, it was the therapist, the PTA, and the aide all asked a single patient, when do we see you again? And it happened within 5 minutes. And I was like, wow, they have really high graduation rate. They have the lowest drop off, and they're all asking this habitually with every single patient. So then I went around to the other teams, especially the lower performing teams, and were they doing that? No. So then it's, okay, we train, we inject it, and then we're constantly watching patient visits per new patient, constantly auditing, going back and seeing, okay, you had 22 evals last month, what happened? Well, here's a block of 17 that didn't seem to finish their plan of care. They dropped off, in under 6 visits in. What's going on there? We look at that. And it's something that, as a manager, director, owner, we constantly have to breathe life into.
Totally relate to that. I'm currently in PT now, and if I have to cancel, I feel really bad telling my therapist, oh, I'm sorry, I can't make it today. Constantly reminds me, when you come in next, this is our goals for next time. And just, it's tough to make that call, so I don't make it that often. Good.
Glad you feel guilty. That's great. I know. So it sounds like, the key thing that we can do with Medicare cuts and the pressure on declining reimbursement, and we'll call it the increased pressures on employment cost, because it's a very competitive marketplace right now, is prevent leakage. And I completely agree. And I see that's how a lot of people are remedying. Also, you mentioned the cash pay, adding cash pay services as well, some sort of hybrid of telehealth, live, whatever's working for the practice. You have a lot of traction in the marketplace. Are there any other differentiators that Prompt has too, in terms of making that happen? Because there seem to be quite a few.
I'm going to touch on just one related to that last point, and then I'll turn it back to Mike. But one other thing to combat Medicare cuts is to actually bill for what you do and bill properly. That is also one of our differentiators. You just put in the treatments you did. We know if the payer uses the CMS or the AMA rule, and we auto-calculate your units in the exactly proper way based on the payer's rules. But so many times we hear therapists who whether it's because their software makes it difficult or they just feel bad about billing for what they did because they don't want the patient to get a bill or things like that. But one way to combat revenue per visit dropping because of payment cuts per unit is making sure you're billing the right amount of units and the optimal units based on how you document it. So that's one of our main differentiators. And it's also a way to combat those Medicare cuts, is to make sure you're actually billing for the services you provide in the optimal manner with the right modifiers and things like that.
Adam, quick confession. So for first 13 years of my professional career, I was an underbiller, chronic underbiller. So you mentioned CMS versus AMA. I'm very aware of what the difference is, but I'm very surprised at how much of our industry does not differentiate at all. They just use Medicare 8-minute rule for 100% of patients coming through. Can you talk about the difference there?
Yes, I was also, when we first started this, it took me a while to realize the differences, and the difference is actually very simple. AMA, each CPT code is really its own thing in terms of the minutes. So if you do 14 minutes of a CPT code, that's 1 unit. If you do 23 minutes, 2. There's a couple exception codes, but whereas Medicare is looking at the entire total billable minutes to calculate how many units you can bill. So if you do 34 minutes, you can do 2. If it's 39, 3. And really what we wanted to build in our software was the therapist doesn't want to have to think, oh, is this an AMA or a CMS payer? I need to manually calculate my units differently. So we just automated it. It's all math, right? It can be automated. If we know how many minutes you did each CPT code, we can calculate your units for you. So we took the thought out of it. Now the therapist can just document, here's what I did for how long. We take care of the rest. So I think that's also important to find a software, and there's others out there, but to make sure you find one that can just do the math for you, because you shouldn't have to do that math while you're trying to treat your next patient. Make sure you ask your current patient, when do we see you again? That just lets you focus on some of that stuff instead of having to do math.
Yeah, I think a big differentiator for us is just proactive practice management. We found, just being in clinics, a lot of practice management is reactionary, whether it be filling therapist capacity, tracking authorizations, making sure billing's happening in a seamless way. It was a lot of, oh God, this isn't working. So we have a ton of tools to make sure that you're ahead of it. My favorite in particular is the plan of care compliance tool. Essentially what it does is it matches the plan of care against what actually transpired in the schedule. And if there's a mismatch there, they're at a concise report for the team to work. I think another big piece from a software standpoint, especially patient facing, is driving the action you want to take place in a seamless way. So if a patient's lost and they haven't been scheduled in 2 weeks, making it easy for them to get back in the schedule, not just call the clinic, text the clinic, fill in this form, but actually driving it so they can make their way into the schedule without interacting with anyone on your team. Just the way we look at technology is, how do we remove someone from a process? And that's a prime example.
Awesome. I know we were talking about data earlier. The obvious one that comes to mind is, and we talked about ideal clients. So it's outpatient PTOT speech. Do I need in-house billing? Can I work with a biller and still use prompt? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so you can use a third-party biller or do in-house. It doesn't matter to us. We're biller agnostic. And that's actually one of the best things about prompt for companies that use third-party billers is, a lot of systems, your biller, your third-party billing company is using a different software than your EMR. So as the owner, I'm logging into my EMR every day, but if I'm not actively doing my billing, I'm probably not logging into my billing software every day. So in Prompt, what's nice is all your data is in one place. So it's really easy to monitor and manage your third-party billers and have better conversations with them about, here's where everything stands, here's where we're making money, here are the problems. And it makes it really easy for that third-party billing company who's not in the office with your staff to just tag a therapist and say, hey, we did this wrong, can we fix this? Or tag a front desk, this patient's missing their insurance details. So that creates a really nice two-way communication. It kind of brings that third-party company into your practice day to day because you're on the same software as them and you can communicate with them in real time.
Great. Anything else to add in there, Mike, on the data or communication?
Yeah, for Actually, what's been cool is seeing how many people have been able to take billing in-house through Prompt. One of the things that we view billing should really be working on is denials, paid partials, AR. Everything else is fluff. So Adam and I spent 2 years working in a billing office and found that most billing teams are working 60 to 75% of the time on things that actually don't need attention. They're either paid full, there's no patient PR. So just moving that out of the way and just focus on problems. But yeah, we work with a ton of billing companies, a ton of people doing in-house, probably like a 50-50 split across our user base.
Great. So I want to explore that concept that was a partnership that you have, because I think it's a term that I'm hearing more, and especially as we talk with larger and larger practices, that's really how they view any other vendor, any other company that they're working with. And I read about it quite a bit in the team rehabilitation press release. So can you talk about your view, the prompt culture, and how you think about partnering with private practice owners?
Yeah, I think collaboration is a big part of it. From a software standpoint, the system will never be done. And talking to people that are using it day in, day out, and listening, but also implementing that feedback, I think is key. I think also just us, we talk to, similar to you, a ton of practice owners and pick up on processes that are working, help give that knowledge to the practice so they can use that and develop a better process. Also just having an open line of communication. We give everyone our cell phones, which has, I guess, led to some problems as we've grown. But I think it's important when someone runs your entire business that they have access to you. So for us, it's just constantly talking to our users, and then based on those conversations, developing the best product we can.
And I think that kind of all comes to fruition in our releases. Every release we send out, probably 50, maybe even up to 70% of the features are directly based off a form that any customer can fill out and suggest a feature. And every release, we're sending 30, 40, 50 emails to these people, letting them know we actually released a feature that they specifically suggested. Since we're not therapists and we don't own practices, we really double down on the fact that our users will tell us what they need. It's our UX team's job to figure out what's the best way to give them what they need, but they're going to tell us what's their pain points and what are the things they could use to become more efficient. And then we take those and really take them to heart and make sure we're constantly incorporating user feedback into our product life cycle.
Love it. Adam and Mike, do you have 2 separate phones?
No, the same, but I should start thinking about getting a second.
So here's how this ends poorly for you, because I did the same thing in the very beginning, and the communication got to be overwhelming. And I was coaching a little league team, 8-year-olds, and I literally was getting a repetitive number calling me over and like 3 or 4 times in a row. And it was something that I wasn't really responsible for in the partnership, but it was an owner that was having financial an urgency, right? And we were helping with marketing. So anyhow, my wife saw that I was like bothered by this and like looking at my phone, and she said, "What are you doing there?" And I said, "This is an owner and this is what they're going through." And she said, "No." So that was the end of me going to my cell phone all the time. So you can get a second cell or just turn off all your notifications. But yes, that my cell phone is out there. You will one day come up with some buffer as well. But in the meantime, to everybody listening, take advantage of this as much as possible because you have Mike and Adam's ear, which is great. Another question that came in, and then I'll ask you about other trends you're seeing in the marketplace. But are you fully integrated with Weave or any other softwares that a lot of practices are using right now?
We have a bunch of integrations. It's kind of one of our core competencies is being able to integrate quickly with other vendors and effectively. Right now, we're not fully integrated with Weave yet. We have like a partnership with them and work with them and are working on an integration. but we have it fully integrated credit card processing, faxing. It's a native built home exercise program, but we're also about to launch another home exercise program integration. We're integrated with Photo for MIPS and outcomes tracking. Missing some, better healthcare for online scheduling, and to convert, all those people you're driving to your website and give them an easy way to actually book the eval. And then just a few back-end integrations to facilitate like all the text messages and the emails and things like that. So we do a lot of integrations. We can do them pretty efficiently and pretty quickly, and do them in a way where it's bi-directional. I think that's the key for any software that's telling you they're integrated with other vendors. Is it a bi-directional feed, or is data only going from one platform to the other? When it's a one-directional integration, you usually don't gain very much efficiency because you're still having to do something in another software that doesn't feed back to your main system. All of our integrations are bi-directional so that we can send data and receive data.
Adam, can you say that in a very lay?
Yeah.
I understand what you mean, but yeah, if you can just dumb it down for the caveman practice owner.
Of course. Yeah, so like a single directional integration would be, we send Photo patient data when a new patient gets created, and that's it. At that point, you would have to go to Photo, you do all your stuff in Photo, but none of that's feeding back to Prompt. A bi-directional integration, we send everything to Photo, the patient gets created in Photo. When the patient does their Photo intake, that feeds back to Prompt. So now it's truly, when you discharge that patient in Prompt, it sends to Photo, and then Photo knows. So it's real time, it's interactive, things are going both ways, and you really can use the functionality from either place and know that it's going to feed back in both ways. Great.
Thank you for doing that. And by the way, I'm the caveman. So just to clarify for all the listeners, what trends are you seeing in private practice right now? I know we talked about Medicare cuts and declining reimbursements earlier, increased pressure on efficiency. And I think what you're doing with software is great because, for years, at least, especially the last 10 years, there's a lot of pressure on the smaller mom and pop practice because they don't have economies of scale and HR, compliance, legal, billing, all those other costs where, it would be significantly more beneficial if they were a 10 million revenue company or 20 million revenue company. They would enjoy more cost efficiencies than if they're $1 million company. Are there any other trends that you see going forward for the survival of the mom and pop practice owner or that aspiring enterprise practice owner?
I think one would be delivering like an exceptional patient experience has really kind of moved to the forefront, even since Mike and I started in PT like in 2017. There's so many choices for a patient, right? Not just even within PT. They can go to chiro, they can go to acu, massage therapy now, hydro. Like, you have to deliver a world-class patient experience to keep them in your practice. It's not just enough to delivering good care is obviously important, but it also has to be pleasant from the moment they walk in to the moment they leave, and the communication you send them via email and text and all this stuff. So I think it's really, really important to deliver a world-class patient experience. I think there's been an increasing focus on that in the past couple of years.
And just scaling your time. Like a big piece, especially what I've been seeing new technology, we're just at PPS, is how do we scale chat? How do we scale therapists in the clinic? You only have so much time. So just leveraging technology that can help communicate almost on your behalf, I think is going to become crucial. If it already is.
Excellent. Adam Baliatico, Michael Dwyer, Prompt EMR, thank you very much both for being here. What is the best way for our listeners to learn more about you, learn more about Prompt, and find you in the metaverse?
Yep, they could go to Prompt, PROMPTEMR.com. They could find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and then Mike, do you have an email they could email?
Yeah, just Mike at Prompt EMR. And I'm always good with people calling me. So if you want to call me, it's 201-926-4278.
Oh my God. You sure you want me to leave that in?
It's
That's
okay.
great. Okay, great. So Mike at promptemr.com. That's a pretty classic co-founder's email. Very good. And you also now have Mike's cell phone number. So please abuse that as much as possible during daytime hours. Thank you both again, Adam and Mike, for being here. This was great.
Thank you, Chad.
Thanks, Chad.
Remember to visit getbreakthrough.com to access our free resource library designed specifically for private practice growth. While you're there, make sure you register for a complimentary growth assessment to learn about potential opportunities for growth in your local market. Again, thank you for tuning into the Grow Your Practice podcast and supporting our mission to help people in pain get back to normal naturally.